Welcome to the Art of Love podcast. My name is Tamar, Gail, and I am here to guide you into deeper, more expansive love, freedom, and pleasure. A deep inner journey of self-discovery. Here, I will cover all types of topics pertaining to love, including self-love and self-care, relationships, tantra, intimacy, sex, all the way to Christ consciousness, and Pachamama, just to name a few broad topics. My mission is to support you in being true to yourself, reconnecting the fragmented pieces and aspects of yourself so that you can find and use your own inner fire, Shakti power, and voice. It is time to break down the old systems that we have been taught to live by. I would love to see you align with your personal truth and nature instead of succumbing to others' views of how you should be, trying to fit inside of the box in order to be accepted, and instead standing in your power and loving all that you are, accessing a new way of being in the world. What would it be like to have more freedom, more time, and more joy in your schedule, and only be working with the clients that you choose? Fran has done exactly that. She's not only a 3-time #1 best-selling author, but also a certified appellate law specialist, judge pro tem, managing partner of the law offices of Fran Tone, with enough spare time to be a fully certified professional ski instructor and trainer, a podium finishing standup paddleboard racer, and spends several weeks a year surfing in Hawaii. She is also the principal business strategic advisor of Francine Tone Associates LLC, offering consulting to business, professional, and executive women, and some good men, to develop better business and life practices to optimize life. Some call it work-life balance and harmony, but Fran prefers to call it life integration. She teaches busy professionals, executives, and business owners to integrate, flow, and thrive. Hi, Fran. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful chatting with you today.
Fran and I were just on the phone for an hour speaking with this amazing conversation, and such a wonderful story, which is why I wanted to have you on, because it really just, for me, showed the power of unconditional love. So I'd love for you to share with our audience your background, because I feel like it's so important for the conversations on love.
Sure. Yeah. So it began when I was just basically a baby. And just very quickly, I'm half Japanese. So I was born in Japan to a Japanese mother and an American father. And when I was 1 year old, my mother passed away and my father left me with my Japanese grandmother, who believed that I should be raised as an American because I'm half and half. So I was adopted at 5. And shortly after I was adopted, I discovered I was adopted. And then my adoptive father told me I was very special because I had been chosen. But that night I remember going to bed feeling very special and like thinking the world, was for me. And then right after that, my adoptive father began molesting me, and I lived with that until I was 20 years old. And I got married at 20 to really just run away from that. Mm. And after that, my son was born, and by then I had this amazing thick shell of protection around me. And I think what saved me, as I tell people, I should have been a drug addict, an alcoholic, or maybe a prostitute at an early age, or even dead at an early age, but I didn't. And there was part of me that just refused to be a victim. And I think in part it's because I must have experienced this unconditional love from my mother, I hope, before I was 1. And I know I did from my grandmother before I was 5. So I had some experience in that. And when I was 8 years old, I came to the US for the first time, and I began watching the Perry Mason show. And every week people would come and watch him, come to him and say, "Oh, you're the only person I can trust. You're the only person I can turn to," because they're all accused of murder or something. And I watched it week after week, and I began trusting Perry Mason because I had no one in the world to trust. My grandmother's gone. I'm living with an adoptive family. My father's molesting me. My mother is doing nothing to help me. And I don't understand why my life is this way. But Perry Mason, I began trusting him. And over time, I decided I wanted to be Perry Mason. So I grew up wanting to become a lawyer, to be that person that people could trust. And by the time I became a lawyer, divorced, remarried, and My son is one person that I would throw my life in front of a train for. And my second husband, I would throw my life in front of a train for. But by then, they loved me unconditionally too. And I knew that. And the only other people I would let in besides them through my thick shell were my clients, because it was so important for me that they knew I had them. I had their back. Because even them, I discovered so many of them had no one to trust in their lives as well. And what really turned, I guess it was a turning point in my life, major turning point in my life, was when my son had grown up and he was an Air Force pilot. And he had gone to New Zealand to go skiing, and I got that call, there's been an accident. And they had found him. He was an Air Force pilot. The world was right in front of him. And he was found unconscious at the bottom of a ski hill. And I dropped everything. Here I am, this really busy professional. I just dropped everything, went to New Zealand. And they told me, he's going to be a vegetable for the rest of his life. And I went, no way. There's no way he's going to be a vegetable. And I did everything I could. And it took long years. It was hard work. And he's not. Yeah. He's not a vegetable, And that's when I look back and I go, that was the power of unconditional love, is to be able to stick by somebody no matter what, no matter anything. Mm-hmm. And to be able to find that in yourself and to be able to give it, but also to receive it. It helped me break down my shell from all those years of my childhood, and realizing that it was these issues of abandonment and trust, and not having trust and needing trust, and being able to trust yourself and trust others. That was at the key to everything. And so today the work that I'm doing is, I've been a lawyer for 30 years. And today the work is, I want to work with more people instead of just one-on-one, but really developing in them this ability to find that trust in themselves, to do, to tap into their weaknesses, which turn around and become your strengths, and to face the things that they've dealt with in their lives that have kept them from trusting themselves, so that they can move forward and upward and move in their journey instead of being stuck in their journey. Yeah. And that's what life integration is about, is, it's not just integrating work and life and family. It's important to do that, but you can't do that completely until you become honest with yourself and saying, this is what I really want in my life. And so I find that a lot of people think they know what they want, but they don't. And they're chasing ghosts, and they're chasing things, the bigger house, the bigger car. They're chasing things that don't even matter, to them.
Things that we've been taught to chase after.
That's right. That's right.
And not really connecting with our own truth and what it is that really, truly makes us happy as individuals,
Right.
And I feel like that is something that oftentimes as children, we talked about being a child a little bit earlier. As children, we have dreams, and we're creative, and we are these little humans that kind of know what we want, right? And then we're told, no, that you can't do that you have to do this, and you have to do it that way. And we're put inside this kind of this little box of following society's rules and following our family's rules. And we kind of lose track of what we want in life. And I from what I hear you talking about, that's part of the integration, right? Is that right? It is.
Yeah. And I ask people all the time, act like a kid. When was the last time you felt like a kid? Last time you acted like a kid, and my life is kind of, I feel like I'm living my life backwards. Remember that movie about Timothy Bottoms, growing younger with age, and
oh yes, Benjamin Button.
Benjamin Button, that's it, right? And I feel like I'm living my life backwards. Although I'm physically getting older and my skin shows it, but I didn't start becoming, I've always wanted to be an athlete, and I kind of snuck into the swim team when I was a child against my parents' wishes. But I, because it was always about, academic. And I was fierce on the playground, and that's where I thrived. But it was always academics. And I know so many people, get your A's, do this, and be at the top of the class. And so I was over 40. I was over 40 years old when I became a ski instructor. And I had learned to ski as an adult. So I was this perpetual intermediate skier. And I became a ski instructor over 40. And I was over 50 when I went through the top certification training and examination, which was really hard. As you're older, it's a lot harder. It's a very athletic endeavor that you have to go through. And then I became a stand-up podium finishing stand-up paddleboard in my 50s.
I love that.
And I was over 50 when I became a scuba dive master and learned to scuba dive. And then I started surfing only 4 years ago. And I don't mind telling people I am 62 years old. And I don't mind telling people I only started surfing on a stand-up paddleboard in Hawaii 4 years ago. And this last summer, a guy took a photograph of me. And I was so proud of it because I dropped about a 10 or 12 foot wave and I rode that wave. And it was the most thrilling moment because that's what I dreamed of doing, was being able to surf a 10, 12 foot wave, not 2 and 3 foot, 10 to 12 foot. And I did it, and I'm in my 60s. And I know there are other people who do that, but I wasn't trained as an athlete my whole life. Even that's what I wanted. I kind of did it here and there, but it wasn't until I had become a lawyer, I'd raised my son, it was afterwards. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we should be doing our whole lives, is tapping into that child in us to do what we love, what makes me want to get up in the morning. And it doesn't mean law doesn't make me want to get up in the morning, because it does, or the other work I do. But how do you integrate this stuff that we left behind as children? How do you integrate that back into your life? And that's what I am teaching people to do. And it's connecting with who you are deep inside, that we've been piling all this garbage on top of to hide it. And
and I think that shows you that it's never too late to start doing something that you love, to start living a life that makes you happy, that really makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. And also, it's something that I had this conversation with my husband even a couple of years ago. What did you love doing as a child? Do more of that. And that's what helped me kind of create. I was on this path, but it's like it helped me create what I'm doing now, to kind of live the dream that I wanted to live. It's like, what was my passion as a child? What just made my heart sing? And that was dance. That was nature, painting, being creative, being artistic, and then adding that into what I do on a daily basis, even with my clients, but just bringing that into my life and how I work with others, because that was my passion. And so I totally resonate with what you're sharing and what you're working on with people, because that is so important in our life to connect with what truly makes us happy. And as you said, get rid of, going through all those layers of other people's opinions and all that junk that's been piled on top of that. There's people that have never sang or are too shy to sing or to dance. And maybe it was something that they loved as a child, but it comes to, if you're told at some point that you're bad at something or you can't do something, or to give up on that because that's only for children, we kind of bury that underneath layers of just junk.
It is. And I just call it for what it is. It's junk that we live, with all this junk in our brains, and it just fills up our brains. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is, and this has to do with comes from working with my son and his brain injury and his recovery. Because at the time he had his brain injury, I saw the CAT scan. He should have been a vegetable the rest of his life. And a lot of these new studies were coming. So I began studying the brain. And my big thing is about how we use our brain bandwidth, all the neural connections in our brain. But I see it as kind of like a freeway. And most of us live with our brain bandwidth kind of in rush hour traffic, where you're not moving, right? The cars are just stopped. And until you get rid of these cars, you're not going to move. And that's how most people live their lives, day in and day out. And some of the work that I do with people is getting rid of the cars and getting them back on a freeway, there's only a couple of cars. So that you have the bandwidth and the energy and time. This is about creating time and energy to do the things you love. Time and energy to integrate all the stuff and bringing the child with you into it, and it's all this junk that we just fill it up with, whether we're angry at our coworker or our boss, or, frustrated with our spouse or ourselves. That's all junk that's filling up your bandwidth. How do we get rid of that and free it up so that every day you find joy in your life? And if it's not bringing you joy, it's hurting you. And, and I told you the story about this gal that I knew who, I'll never forget this. This was such a big moment for me. And, my backstory is I had this horrible stuff happening to me growing up. And then she's at a party and she's been drinking and she gets drunk and she starts crying and telling me about how horrible her life was. And this is a young girl who grew up with a very wealthy family. She had everything she wanted. She was popular in school, all the things I didn't have, and I'm thinking, what? Your life was wonderful. And she's going on, but apparently, her mother told her at a very young age, you're fat. And she's been battling this thing in her mind ever since. And as I watched her realizing that even though objectively what she went through may not seem as bad as what I went through, the impact on her brain and how it made her feel was the same.
Yeah.
And people have a tendency to compare objectively, well, my story was worse than yours, or my story is not as hard as yours. The feelings that we experience and the consequence to our mind and our spirit is the same.
Yeah.
And so we shouldn't judge other people's stories, because it's not that you haven't walked in the shoes to know the story. You haven't walked in their shoes to know the feeling that they've experienced and the devastation that it has caused. And until you walk in their shoes, you don't know. But when you stop and go, wow, that's exactly how I feel, despite the story, then you realize we're all feeling the same thing. We're all feeling lost, and we're all feeling put upon, and we all have this shell, this facade we have to wear. And the key is to break down that facade so you can let those things come out and free yourself, so you can keep moving in your journey instead of being stuck there.
And I love that you bring that up, because it's a really important topic for love of self, and also unconditional love, because when you can actually look at someone, anyone else, and say, you know what, I see you, and I understand that you're hurting, and you understand that there's something behind their facade and behind the barriers that we all put up, because we do build these walls and we build barriers to try to protect ourselves from being hurt from someone else. And when we do, it can seem like some people has everything together or their life is perfect, but as you never know what's going on behind their facade, behind that protective barrier. And it could be something completely different from our own story, but yes, their own pain is just as strong, because that's their experience. And we all have our own experience, and it can be felt really deeply. Yeah. So just opening up to that unconditional love of everyone and seeing everyone as the same is really quite huge.
Yeah, it is. It means you're going to have a deeper connection with everybody you meet, and you are going to be happier. Even if they're not, it's that you're going to be happier. And that's what's important, is that if you come into every relationship with at least some love, you're going to get more out of that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what shells do, is they prevent you from showing up with love, because you're holding it in and keeping it hidden. And, a lot of times when people speak about love, they think, oh, that applies to me in my romantic relationships or with my children and all that. But this topic is relevant in business.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm seeing so much. There's a lot of articles that are being published lately about good bosses, bad bosses, and they're showing that people don't quit jobs; they quit managers, right? Because they have a bad boss, and it's miserable going to work because you have to deal with this person. And yet, most of those people who are the bad bosses, so to speak, they're people who've been put in a position with no training to improve. They come to that position with this shell about them. And every time I read an article about, what are the characteristics of a boss that nobody likes to work for, is I see in the description a person who has a very thick shell, feelings of insecurity, feelings of abandonment, all these feelings where they don't feel like they're worthy of their position. They're not worthy of their own self-love. They're not worthy of their own, they don't have any self-confidence in themselves, which comes from not loving yourself, not giving yourself enough credit for who you are, and then not getting the training or not being given the training to do the job. Yeah. But it's both, right? It's not just the training, but it's being able to look at yourself and say, I got this. I can care about the people that I work with, instead of these bosses are all concerned about themselves because they're protecting themselves. And unconditional love is about the ability to open yourself up to hurt, right? And not being worried about that. It's being worried about the other person, caring about the other person. That's what unconditional love is it's about you, not me anymore. Yeah. And it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable enough to say, it's not about me anymore. And but it requires facing those fears head on and realizing that we're fearing I call them imaginary lions, and I have a course that I give to attorneys about these invisible lions chasing you. And because of this whole fear thing, remember that, our ancestors, they used to run from lions. And right. And, you're on the Serengeti, a lion's chasing you, it's fight or flight. And if you don't have the spear, you're going to run as fast as you can, or you're going to fight and stand up and fight. And when you're not there, we're doing the same thing, but the lions are invisible. There's nothing there to eat you. And so why do we keep acting as if there is? But that's a habit. We've become so fearful in our society. We can't let our guard down. And when we face ourselves, face those fears, and realize that they're really not real fears, there's nothing really real to fear about. And like my own example, being molested. Yeah, when I was 6 and 7, that was something to fear, but I don't have to fear that now. It's gone. Abandonment, that's gone. I've got a man who unconditionally loves me and a son who does. I don't need to fear that anymore. Yeah. And so but you have to face it so that you get rid of that. Now, you can feel comfortable to care about other people around you. And that's, I think, the key to helping people who are perceived as bad bosses become better bosses. How peers, how you can become a better coworker, how you can be a better spouse, a better parent, a better child, a better whatever. And it's not even a question of improvement. It's because I believe that people are good enough. Everybody has their story. Everybody has their fears. And very few have fully tapped into their own history and turned that weakness into a strength and flipped that on its head. And I think that's the key to really becoming really aware of yourself and aware of others around you, where you become the most, like I said, you're plenty good enough the way you are. It's flipping those weaknesses onto their heads. You already have it. You already have the strengths. You don't even realize it, right? And to be able to do that in a way that you become more effective with those around you. It's like, why wouldn't you want to have that? It's much nicer to be loved than it is to be hated, right? It's just a much nicer feeling.
Oh, yeah. And I think everyone works for you a little bit better when they love you.
Right.
I mean, that's my own opinion. But
No, and that's what all these articles are saying, that when people love you, when people care about you, they want to hang out with you, they're more motivated. They want to help you.
Yeah, they want to give you their best.
They do.
And this is just a little side note for this piece of our conversation, that here we are also talking about relationships in business and in the companies that we work for, when we work for a larger company or any company at all, how important it is for the owner, the boss, the CEO, whoever that is, to come from a place of love and respect, because like that, we also, as employees, give our best to the company. So there. May we go out into the rest of this week embodying more love.
But if they feel they're being slighted and mistreated because of the person they're working for is so insecure in their own world, then there's no connection for people to say, I'll give you my 100%.
Yeah.
You know, and then those are the ones, of course, and you hear it all the time. I gave them 100%, but I felt slighted because there's no connection, because it requires you to be so present and real and authentic. And that's how you get that. We hear people talk about authenticity all the time, right? And about being open and honest all the time. But how do you do that? How does a person become authentic?
Yeah.
You have to first get very real with yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Seeing your own weaknesses, your own hurts, and looking at them and not hiding from them, and, doing that, taking that inward journey of love, loving yourself, no matter what, through all the shadows and the light side, it's loving yourself enough. And that love of self then goes outward, to everybody else, whether that's in business or in your daily life.
Yeah, it does. I'll tell you my first blog that I ever did, and and I'm not a blogger where I blog consistently, but I had my thoughts out there. And my first blog is called The Stack of Rocks. And I was approaching my 60th birthday, and I started thinking about my stack of rocks. And stack of rocks to me is everything that's ever happened to me and everything I've ever done. Each one is a rock. And some rocks are very flat and very foundational and very steady. And some rocks are kind of round and topply. And then, you picture that stack of rocks you see people do, the kind of spiritual stack of rocks. But our life is a stack of rocks, and some are topply and some are flat. But you can't remove one because then the whole thing comes apart. You're stuck with all of the rocks that you have. And every rock that you have made you who you are. And for every negative, there's a positive. And so one of the things that I wrote in my blog is really, how do you get away from the negative? Because you go, I don't like some of my rocks. Well, maybe not, but they're part of who you are, so we can't ignore it. And so one of my rocks is I'm very stubborn. And stubborn is not a word that's used usually to describe somebody in a positive way. So I said, you take every one of these rocks that you don't like, and what is the negative? I'm stubborn. Well, what's the positive flip on that? I'm tenacious. I may be stubborn, but I'm also tenacious, and that's the positive. And what I was in that blog, I told people to do is write down all the things that people said to you or you say to yourself that's negative, and find the positive. And I give a bunch of examples. And then you take the positive line, you cut out the negative, cut it off, like take scissors and cut that off. And then right at the top, I am. And now you have a list of all the positive characteristics, which was the flip side of the coin of the negative. And you tape that to your mirror. And that becomes your daily affirmation of who you really are.
Oh, I love that.
Because that is who you are. And when you start accepting those, that's when you start realizing you can unconditionally love yourself. Because this is who you are.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful exercise. Yes.
Yeah. And if I had not... Yeah, and if I had not been stubborn, I wouldn't be tenacious today.
It's going to be one of my affirmations. I'm very stubborn, so I'm going to use that one. That's wonderful. And I'm just thinking about that your business, and what you're doing and what you're teaching is so connected. And I'm just seeing that little girl at 6 years old, sitting in front of the TV, watching this lawyer wanting trust, wanting to be able to trust somebody and, to feel safe, and then going out in the world years later and creating that and offering, like having that as your offering to the world of creating that safe container for other people.
Right.
And you did that. And that's super powerful to have that dream as a little girl and to do that in your life.
Yeah. And I will be honest, it's taken a long time to connect that into something. How do I take that and create a way where I can help other people? And it's taken a long time to figure out how do I do that? Because I kind of know it intuitively because that was my life and I lived it.
Yeah.
And it's taken me going back and sitting down and saying, well, what did I do? What did I do to get where I am? And it was a tough journey because I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have a guide. I just kind of hit and missed and made mistakes and fell on my face a few times. Right? I mean, that's what journeys do. And then now I realize, wow, there was a path going backwards, and I'm at that point where I'm like, yeah, if I can help somebody do that without having all the trips and face plants that I had. I'm a skier, so I talk in terms of face plants. But to be able to go through that journey of peeling off the armor without having to face plant every time you took a layer of the onion off and stumble and not have to shed as many tears as I did is, to be able to do that and to share that journey and help people get through it faster. That if I could help, a handful of people do that, it would be phenomenal.
It's taking tenacity.
Yes. Well, because I'm stubborn. And you know what? I'll tell you this is that I think that I'm very persistent. I'm very stubborn. I have those habits and skills that not everybody has. That motivation, self-motivation, tenacity, persistence, and all that. But even then, if I didn't have a support system, it would have been way harder. So I'm glad I did. But looking back now, like sometimes it takes a while to develop tenacity, persistence, those kinds of habits. But I learned from the support that I had that when you have support, you don't have to have those skills in spades. You can think, okay, I want those skills, and going through the journey can help you develop those skills and those habits. But having support is what gets you there, and that's why I'm throwing myself out there to help people, because like I'll be your support. That's what I'm here for.
And I wanted to bring that back around because I know we started this with talking about unconditional love as well as your business and how all of that brought you to where you are now. And also you just mentioned the support system that you have. And I know that we spoke about the unconditional love and support of your husband and your son, that you have together, and how that's helped you, and having that support system has helped you so much. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, my husband, he is such a rock for me. And so I've been a lawyer. When I married him, I wasn't a lawyer. And he goes, go to law school. And he supported me through that. And at that time, we had opened up a brand new practice for him. And I was running the practice. But he was so supportive. He could go study, go do this, go whatever I had to do. And he had 2 boys and I had my son. And he would cook dinner. He'd work all day as a lawyer and then come home and cook dinner. So I'd go to law school at night. And he was never once did he turn to me and say, gosh, I'm getting tired of doing this. Never once. He was 100% the whole way. And then as I became an attorney, 100% supported me in everything I did. And then a few years ago, when I decided I wanted to take this new journey to do something besides one-on-one, but, one-to-many type of helping them get through this. And this journey began when my adopted father passed away. And actually, it's funny, we were married for 20 years and my husband did not even know about my past, about my history with my adopted father. And then when he passed away, everything just kind of like bubbled up inside of me. And he turned to me and he said something, and I just burst out crying. And that's when he realized, oh my gosh, something bad really happened to her. And he helped me through that. He helped me face those demons. And that's when he realized why I had such a thick armor around me. And the reason he married me is he saw a chink in the armor. He saw this opening and went, who I see on the outside isn't the person inside. And he saw that. And he spent the first 20 years of our marriage chinking away at it, never faltering. Imagine, it's like, wow. Who else would do this?
It feels, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, he believed in me and cared about me so much that he just, for 20 years, just chinking away the armor. And it wasn't until that moment when I broke down in tears that the little bit that was left all just came crumbling down. And I opened up everything. And so when I started this journey, I want to slowly stop practicing law and just really build this new business and go and help women and some men kind of go through their journey and help them become the most effective, powerful person they can be. He's been there for me when I've been having, as with anybody who starts a new business, you have your ups and downs, and I'm still going through my journey too, right? And I wake up some mornings and go, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. He goes, yes, you can, and he will throw back at me the exact words he heard me say. And he goes, don't forget, you said this or you said that. And he's there 100% every day for me. And, I've learned so much just from watching how unconditional his love is for me to do this. And my son is the same way. Every time I do something new, he just sends me a text or an email or a phone call and says, you're amazing, Mom. And yeah, the guy's 40 years old now, and he gives me presents. You're the coolest mom. You're the most amazing mom. He just still does that. And he's such a beautiful young man. And I am thrilled that he was able to recover from that brain injury. And, and the way I'm so thankful that I've lived long enough now to be able to pay back unconditional love to them, because they gave it to me before I was able to express it to them, and so it's a big deal. But having that support system is so important, because the harder your journey or the longer you've gone without facing some of those things in your history, the harder it is. And the more you need a support system to get through. But I'm living testament. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you are in your journey. It's totally doable. And there's no reason for you to live in this shell. And I can't imagine. I'm so glad I broke through it, because I can't imagine, like, at the end of my life, dying with this big, heavy armor on.
Yeah.
And the freedom that I feel today, because I don't carry that mental armor, is amazing.
It's just peeling back that onion, those layers to get to the diamond, the jewel inside. And every one of us has that, everyone of us has that diamond inside, that childlike innocence, if we just take it back all the way, uncovering and going deeper, that once we come just even closer, little by little, to that space inside, that innocence, that childlike innocence that we have, we have the ability to live this life of happiness and joy, and it's something that sometimes we don't see.
That's true.
The opportunity.
And exactly. And I don't believe that living a life of joy means that you're always in this euphoric stage.
Oh no.
Because there's ups and downs.
For
but
sure.
But I'll tell you, I'm glad I have ups and downs, because if you didn't have up and down, you wouldn't have anything to compare the joy when you are feeling joy. But your norm should be a very positive place, so that And when negative things happen to you and when you get negative feelings, you can just manage it better. That's the point. You have the brain bandwidth to manage it better. You have the internal feeling that the world isn't coming to an end just because something negative happened to you.
Yeah.
You know, it's being able to manage life and what life throws at you at a higher level.
Yes.
At a you know, and I'm not sure the word smarter is the right word, but in a smarter way, so that you're not destroying hours, days, weeks, sometimes months and years away to deal with something that happened to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you for saying it that way. That's, yeah. And I'm hoping that everyone listening can really, you know, just let that sink in and just really feel that, you know, in their hearts, in their center of their being. And, you know, think of ways that you can come back to that place, you know?
Yeah. You know, sometimes I ask this question, what's your monkey bar? Because when I was 5 and 6 years old, living in Germany, not Germany, in Japan, and my adopted father's molesting me, I learned back then that daytime was my time. And daytime, when I wasn't at home and he was at work, I was free. And I would go to the playground and play really hard, you know, and I was a typical kid, you know, I'd run home and I could barely get there before I peed in my pants because there's just play till the very end. And I would be on the monkey bars and the crossbars, every apparatus. And my goal was to beat the boys, to be better than the boys. and I was. But when I got on those monkey bars, I can still picture myself on the monkey bars and the freedom that I had. I was like a real monkey, you know, on them. And the joy I experienced during that. And like what you said earlier about finding out what was it you loved to do? It's like, what's your monkey bar? What's your monkey bar? What was the thing that you did that you knew you were good at? And you just like, you were the king of the hill, the queen of the hill when you did that thing, you know, and it could be painting. Maybe it was singing. It could be monkey bars. It could be anything, but what was it?
Yeah.
And how would it feel if you could have something today that felt like that?
Yes.
To get a monkey bar today, you know, and for me, that's surfing. And that's my current monkey bar. And it doesn't have to, I tell people, you don't have to become a skier and go down Black Diamonds. You don't have to go surfing 10-foot waves, but there's something that would give you the feeling I get when I'm out there on this, you know, on the wave is, what is that?
Yeah.
And when people say, I don't know, that's when I go, okay, we got to find out, because when you say, I don't know, that tells me that your shell is so thick and you've detached yourself so much from what makes you so special that you know, we got to spend some journey finding it, because wow, that's where your joy comes from. And you need that kernel. Right? You need that little kernel to grow.
And that's the fun part for me. It's like just rediscovering what makes you, what that is for you, what that monkey bar is for you. That's
and it doesn't have to be one thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you mentioned singing, because when I've always been not allowed to sing because I was so bad at it. And
maybe that's what I'm talking about.
Exactly. I was so bad at it. And so even my husband, this is the only time he goes, okay, maybe you shouldn't sing. And I was like, because you're so bad at it. You know, like, I know you're right. I shouldn't. And I was. And tone deaf and all that. And then about a few years ago when I was in Hawaii with some friends, they took me to a karaoke bar. And I don't sing, right? And they gave me some like hard lemonade, and they go, and I can't sing. But being just a little buzzed, I grabbed the microphone and I sang. And I was terrible. I could hear myself. It was terrible. But I had so much fun.
Yes.
And I thought, why am I not doing this when I could have so much fun? So I came in and I came home and I discovered this app on the phone. It's, you know, app where I could sing and record myself. And then I downloaded more apps on like voice training. And then I went on YouTube and did some stuff. And I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. And about 8 months later, I went back to Hawaii and went back to karaoke with my friends. They go, oh my gosh, you've improved. I went, I have, haven't I? And even my husband says now, you can sing now. I'm not great, but by any means, but I'm good enough that he's okay with me singing. But the thing is, you don't have to be great at it. It's just fun.
Yeah.
And that's, and so that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to try something new, like every once in a while. And then I picked up the ukulele now and I'm, learning to play that, and I'm not very good, but I'm having a lot of fun. And that's part of this journey of finding your monkey bar. Sometimes you just have to try a few different things and you'll find another monkey bar.
So funny. I'm learning the ukulele also. So when
are you
have to get together and play?
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's kind of like that. I like to pick up new things and just kind of try them, and I love music. So yeah, I'm getting there.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. And I grew up playing the piano, and so I have that,
Yes.
but I've always wanted to be a guitar player because it was mobile. It's right. It's hard to take your piano places.
Yes.
And I was always jealous of people with their guitars, and they could go everywhere with it. And so now I have the ukulele. So
I'm exactly the same. I played piano growing up, and I wanted to play the guitar because you can carry it with you. And the ukulele is even better because it's so small.
Right. Exactly. And there's only 4 strings.
Exactly. Got to be easier, right?
Right.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with me today and with the audience, and just being, vulnerable and open and sharing this this great story of, we've kind of covered so many different topics here, and I love that. I love how this conversations can go that way, because
this is great.
On topics of love in the workplace and unconditional love of ourselves, and removing those barriers, and of a support system at home, of having that support around you. And there's just so much here that I thank you so much for being so open and to share all this with me.
Oh, thank you so much.
And can you tell everybody how they can find you and where they can find out more about you?
Sure. So my website where they can connect with me is www.francine.tone.com. So it's just my name, francinetone.com.
Okay.
And when you go out there,
comments, I'll spell that out.
That'd be great.
The website in the comments as well.
And they can do that. And in fact, right now on my website, there is a link to sign up to get a free copy of my upcoming book, The Art of Action. And that book, if they sign up, they'll, they can get a pre-release of that when it does come. And The Art of Action has a lot to do with the work that I'm doing, and primarily has to do with clearing that bandwidth so that we get from, rush hour to open freeway in our bandwidth. And that is a key to opening up our minds so that we can integrate all of life in a way that works for each person.
I love that. Yes. Okay. So definitely register for that. And I will do the same thing. Wonderful. And anything else you'd like to share before we close on what you have going on or anything coming up?
Oh, let's see. Well, actually, in February, if anyone happens to be near Phoenix, I'm speaking at an event on February 6th. And it's actually in Glendale, and it's at the Fearless Women Summit. So if they Google Fearless Women Summit, they would find it. And it's actually held at multiple places, and it's onewoman.com that's presenting it. And so the mine is in Phoenix, but even if you were not around Phoenix, if you went to that website, she has like 30 events.
Wow.
The East Coast, the South, California, the West Coast, and then Phoenix and other places all across the country, and where women are speaking from stage about, becoming fearless. And, all the things that we talked about today are the kind of things that a woman who wants to be fearless is, you need to grab this kind of stuff and run with it. And to be able to hear women speaking on stage about that. And if you go to their website, there's also links to some of their videos But my Facebook page, I also have a link to that from my Facebook page, which is Francine Tone on Facebook. They can go there, and there's a link to the Phoenix one. And then from there, they can find other things as well about the event. So that's coming up in February, and I'm really excited about that.
Wonderful. I did see that on your Facebook page, and that was really interesting to me. So I'm so happy that you brought that up, because I had forgotten to mention that. But yes, definitely check that out. And that's fearlesswoman.com.
Yes. No, it's not fearlesswoman.com. It's fearlesswomensummit.com.
Fearless Women Summit.
Yeah. And I will tell you, this was an amazing conversation for me, because you helped me connect things that had been out there, and some of the connections that we talked about, they just connected just now for me. Even it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course. And this and this and that. Like, oh, there it goes. And there it is. And taking that trust and really seeing how it weaves through the trust and the unconditional love, but the trust and how it weaves through everything that I want to do. Yeah.
Everything that you're bringing, all your medicine that you're bringing to the world. Yes. Yeah. Has to do with the trust. And that's powerful to hear your story, and then to see all that play out in our conversation, and how it all weaved together.
Yeah.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you so much. And I look forward to reading your book, actually, that's coming out. And I just want to thank you so much, Fran, for being here with us today and sharing this conversation. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode of The Art of Love. And I look forward to connecting with you next Wednesday. May we go out into the rest of this week embodying more love for ourselves, love for others, and love for Pachamama, Mother Earth. So love to each and every one of you, and see you next week.